Okay, let's dive into this. The sources we looked at set quite a scene. Imagine a regular morning in an Austin courtroom.
Yeah, kind of dreary, maybe some rain outside, the usual courtroom sounds, paper shuffling, reporters maybe looking a bit bored.
Right, the usual.
hmm
Then bam, the doors open and it's Elon Musk walking in. But here's the thing, alone.
No big security detail, no lawyers right away, just him, simple suit. Causes a bit of a stir, obviously, but maybe not total shock initially.
And he's there because he's been summoned, right?
Exactly. The main issue, according to these accounts, was that he'd supposedly violated a gag order.
From a big corporate case involving one of his company.
That's the one. The specific claim was he'd talked publicly about stuff that was meant to be sealed by the court, restricted details.
And the judge presiding, Judge Even Radford, the sources paint her as, well, pretty formidable.
Oh yeah, sharp, precise, and apparently has absolutely zero tolerance for, let's say, theatrics from powerful people.
Good context, so she doesn't mess around.
Not at all. The sources say she got straight to it. Initial ruling.
Oh, bad.
Yes, he had violated federal court orders about that sealed testimony.
And the immediate consequence.
A fine, $3.2 million, with 14 days to pay it.
Okay. And Musk's reaction. Anything dramatic?
Apparently not. The sources describe him as just unreadable.
Yeah.
No outburst, nothing obvious. You'd think, okay, he got fined, he'll deal with it, maybe appeal later. Story over.
But clearly not.
Absolutely not. This is where it really veers off script. Instead of just letting his lawyers handle things, Musk asked to respond himself, personally.
Wow. Did the judge allow that?
Well, the accounts say Judge Radford strongly advised him not to, urged him to use his lawyers. But he insisted.
Okay, so now everyone's paying attention, I imagine.
Oh, completely. The whole vibe in the room just shifts. Reporters, other lawyers, everyone's suddenly laser-focused. He wasn't being loud or arrogant, apparently, just controlled.
And what did he say?
He acknowledged the fine, the accusation, but then he posed this question. The sources quote him saying something like, "What I do not understand is why transparency is being treated as a crime."
Ooh. Transparency is being treated as a crime. That lands differently in a courtroom, doesn't it?
For sure. Caused a bit of a murmur, apparently, but the judge, she wasn't having it, philosophically speaking.
She pushed back.
Yeah, firmly. Reiterated that, look, there was an explicit order about specific details. Federal law on sealed orders doesn't really leave room for, personal interpretation like that in this situation. It was about the violation itself.
But he didn't just leave it there.
Not even close. This is the part that really gets dramatic. He apparently pulls out a piece of paper from his pocket, folded up.
And it was, don't tell me.
The First Amendment.
Yeah?
Yep, the text of the First Amendment to the Constitution.
Whoa, okay. Reporters must have gone wild then. What did the judge do?
Her eyes narrowed, according to the descriptions. She reminded him, essentially, that while the Constitution is fundamental, the court deals with specific orders and violations, not broad philosophical debates in this kind of procedural setting.
So he wasn't just making a philosophical point.
He clarified, apparently.
Yeah.
Said he wasn't challenging the court's basic authority, but the precedent he felt this specific ruling was setting.
How did he frame that?
He basically reframed the whole thing.
Yeah.
Said it wasn't really about him violating an order, but about him speaking out against, and these are his terms according to the sources, corruption, censorship, and backroom deals. He called the court's action control, not justice.
That's a direct challenge to the court's motive. How did that go over?
Subtle reactions mostly, people shifting, glancing at each other. The judge apparently asked him point blank if he was suggesting the court was acting in bad faith.
And his response?
Something about whether courts are there to defend people or protect the powerful. Still framing it in these bigger terms.
Okay, so then he got more specific legally.
Yeah, he reportedly pulled out another document. And this time, he started citing legal precedent about gag orders themselves.
Ah, the legal tests.
Exactly. He argued, based on precedent, that gag orders have to pass certain tests to be constitutional, right? Like there needs to be a compelling state interest.
A really strong reason for the government to limit speech.
Right. And it has to be narrowly tailored.
Meaning it shouldn't be too broad, just target the specific problem.
Yep. And it shouldn't suppress more speech than absolutely necessary. His argument, as the sources lay it out, was that this particular gag order failed on all three counts. Therefore, unconstitutional in his view.
So he's not just saying it's unfair, he's saying it's legally invalid.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then he dropped another line that apparently really stirred things up. The judge needed the gavel.
What was it?
He said something like, if transparency is a crime, then the real criminals are the ones trying to silence it.
Okay, he's really pushing it now. Judge's reaction.
Warned him he was walking a very fine line.
And what?
His reported reply, so is this court. Direct. Mutual accusation almost.
Wow. So the core argument became about who gets to decide what speech is acceptable.
That seems to be the crux of it from his side. Judge Radford, naturally, defended the order's purpose, saying it was about ensuring a fair legal process, keeping things orderly.
But he challenged that idea of fairness.
They did. Questioned why he was the only one being silenced. What about media leaks or anonymous sources? If it's really about controlling information flow for fairness, why single him out?
Back to the idea of control versus fairness.
Exactly. He basically said he couldn't comply with an order he saw as unconstitutional, believing in something bigger than legal technicalities. And finished with that line about if fairness means silencing people, then fairness is already dead.
Heavy stuff. So where did it go from there? The judge must have had to respond.
Absolutely. The accounts say Judge Radford asked him directly, are you going to comply with this order going forward?
And his answer?
He said he wouldn't break the law, but he also wouldn't give up his free speech for what he called an unjust order.
Which the judge interpreted as
a refusal to comply. She stated the court had no choice but to take further action. And then she upped the penalty significantly.
This is where the amount jumped.
Right.
Yeah.
The new fine, $10 million.
$10 million? Okay, that must have gotten a reaction.
Oh, yeah. Collective gasp, reporters stunned, opposing lawyers shocked. A real jolt went through the room, according to the sources.
But Musk himself, what was his reaction to $10 million?
Still unblinking, apparently.
Yeah.
Just sort of exhaled, nodded, and said, okay, 10 million it is.
Okay. Just, okay.
And then the kicker, the sources say he pulls out his phone right there, starts tapping.
No way.
Yes way. Looks up at the judge and says, payment sent. And apparently even showed her the phone screen as confirmation.
He paid $10 million on the spot from his phone in the middle of the hearing.
That's how the sources describe it. Utter silence. Then the clerk, totally stunned, confirms the payment actually went through.
I can't even imagine the look on the opposing lawyers' faces.
Baffled is the word used. Musk, meanwhile, just standing there, seemingly unfazed.
What did the judge do? She must have been taken aback.
Clearly. The sources suggest she was probably expecting a fight, negotiation, something. She asked him if he really grasped the seriousness of the situation.
And his response? Still casual.
Pretty much. Something like, sure, you find me, I paid it, what's next?
Wow. Did she press him?
She did. Try to make him understand there could be consequences beyond money if he kept defying orders.
Which led to more philosophy?
Apparently so. He turned it back on her, asking, if the government starts deciding what people can and can't say, who gets to decide where that line is drawn? Making a slippery slope argument.
Suggesting that restricting speech inevitably escalates.
Big time. They reportedly saw that as challenging the whole legal process, the legitimacy of the case.
So how did Judge Radford handle that after the shock of the payment and that comment?
She regained her composure, stated the fine was paid, but issued a warning. Any more violations, and the consequences wouldn't just be financial. Then she adjourned the hearing.
Finally over then. Fine paid, warning issued, hearing done.
You would think. But no, as people are starting to pack up, get ready to leave. Commotion?
What kind of commotion?
A man, dark suit, pushing through the crowd, heading straight for the judge's bench with real purpose.
Not just a lawyer or clerk.
Nope. Identified in the reports as a federal agent.
A federal agent in her courtroom after this hearing?
Exactly. He hands Judge Radford a sealed document. Her reaction is described as immediate tension, clenched jaw, stiff posture. She bangs the gavel again. Court's back in session. Tells Musk he needs to stay put.
What was in the document? What authority did the agent claim?
He stated it was a direct order from the Department of Justice.
DOJ stepping in? How did the judge react to that?
The sources say she called it a violation of judicial independence. Clearly not happy about the feds marching into her courtroom like that.
Yeah.
But she also acknowledged that this federal involvement made the situation bigger than her.
And Musk's reaction to suddenly having a federal agent there?
An amused, full-bodied laugh, according to the sources. He supposedly joked that they must not have liked him paying the fine so easily.
Okay, but what did the agent actually want?
He formally requested to remand Musk into federal custody for questioning.
Take him into custody. Right there.
That was the request. But Musk apparently cut him right off.
Yeah.
Demanded the grounds. On what grounds? And when the agent apparently hesitated, or didn't give a specific immediate reason, Musk pushed, saying they didn't have a real reason.
What did the judge say to all this?
Sounding exasperated, she reportedly advised Musk to just comply for now, let his lawyer sort it out later.
Did he?
Scoffed, apparently, but said he would comply. Then he stepped forward, towards the agent, but also, significantly, towards the reporters and cameras still present.
And made another statement.
A very pointed one. Declared this isn't a courtroom anymore, it's a stage. He accused them of wanting a headline, not justice, and finished that moment with, let's give them one.
Making it clear he saw it as performative. The tension must have been unbelievable.
Off the charts.
Yeah.
The agent reportedly stiffened, everyone waiting to see what happens next. And then
The doors again.
the doors burst open again, but this time it's Musk's legal team. And they are prepared.
Prepared how?
The sources describe them moving like a well-oiled machine. Calm, precise. The lead attorney strides past the federal agent, who's probably still processing Musk's statement, and hands a folder straight to Judge Radford.
And inside the folder.
An emergency injunction. Not from her court, but signed by the appellate court.
The higher court. What did the injunction do?
It specifically blocked any further attempt to detain Musk by the federal agent or anyone else connected to this specific matter at that moment.
Wow. So his team anticipated this move, or something like it.
It certainly seems they were ready for multiple possibilities. The reaction described is another gasp. Reporters scrambling, realizing the Fed's move had just been legally blocked.
How did the judge react to the injunction?
Grabbed it, read it quickly. Her face reportedly went pale as she took it in. Musk, meanwhile, is described as just calmly saying, "You were saying, Your Honor."
Turning the tables. What about the federal agent?
Dark expression. Clearly furious, but legally, his hands were tied by the higher court's order. Judge Radford confirmed it. Unless the agent had a separate active arrest warrant for something else entirely, the injunction meant she had no authority to detain Mr. Musk.
And the agent didn't have another warrant.
Apparently not. And with the cameras rolling, the optics of trying to force the issue against a clear appellate court order,
Yeah.
well, wasn't good. He backed down.
And Musk's reaction to the agent backing down?
A smirk, according to the sources.
Huh.
And the line. That's what I thought.
So the immediate crisis averted for him. What happened then?
Total chaos. Reporters rushing, the agent retreating. Musk, described as completely unfazed by the whole whirlwind, just turns to his legal team.
And says,
Shall we? Like they're just heading out for lunch.
unbelievable. Did he say anything else on the way out?
Pause at the doors, apparently.
Hmm.
And his last words in the courtroom, ringing out, according to the sources, "I warned you."
A warning. What did the sources make of that?
They described the courtroom atmosphere just completely shifting after he left. The gavel finally came down, case dismissed on that specific issue, but the disbelief stuck around. One source described him standing earlier with that glint in his eye, framing the final "I warned you" as connected to that.
And outside. Media scrum, I
A
assume.
huge crowd of reporters, and he gave them one last soundbite.
Which was
They thought I would roll over. They were wronged.
getting the last word. How did the sources frame that final statement?
As his definitive message from the whole encounter. He wasn't scared. This was just one fight in what he sees as a bigger conflict, and he's nowhere near done. Now, it's important we add this final note. One of the sources we looked at does explicitly frame these events in a wider political context, mentioning attacks on Trump supporters.
Right. Context from the source itself.
Exactly. But just to be clear for everyone listening, our focus in this deep dive has been solely on relaying the sequence of events, the arguments made about the gag order, the payment, the federal intervention, and the injunction, all as detailed within these specific source materials. We're reporting what the sources describe, not endorsing any broader political claims they might attach to it.
Understood. Maintaining impartiality on the source's own framing. So stepping back from the blow-by-blow, quite a narrative.
Absolutely. We went from what seemed like a standard, if high-profile, hearing about a gag order violation fine,
To a full-blown constitutional debate on the courtroom floor, a stunning $10 million instant payment, and attempted federal detention.
and a dramatic legal counterpunch with an appellate injunction, all playing out very publicly.
The core conflict described throughout these sources really seems to be that tension, doesn't it? Between the court's need for order and control over its process via tools like gag orders.
And this very forceful assertion of free speech, transparency, and a challenge to the legitimacy of that control when it's perceived as silencing dissent or inconvenient truths.
So, thinking about everything laid out in these accounts, the arguments, the actions, the confrontations, it really does leave you, the listener, with something to chew on.
Definitely. Considering everything presented in these sources, where do you think that line should be drawn? That complex, often shifting balance between maintaining the authority and function of the courts and upholding these fundamental principles of free expression and transparency in our public life today?